We're delighted to have you here today. My name is Toby Oyebola, and I'm joining today from Canada. I would say good afternoon, good evening as well, because I know people are joining us from all over the world. And we're really delighted that you'll be sharing the next 60 minutes with us. We take this very precious and we'll make sure that you guys enjoy today and go out of today with actionable next steps. Today is going to be very engaging and we have beautiful panelists here today. But before we get started, I want to take you guys briefly through Lighthill Club. Lighthill Life was founded by Mrs. Ifedayo Adeoba in 2017. This was born out of a need that she saw in the society where she needed to link children, their needs, and the parental support that people needed to guide the children in the right path to go. Mrs. Adeoba started Children Light Club in 2017 with only 7 children. And I'm very proud to say now that we're very excited to know and share with you that we have over 200 children registered all over the world joining this club. We do not take it for granted. We thank you for your support. And it's something that we continue to rely on going forward. Children's Light Club is one of the many foundations that Lighthill Life holds under it. Lighthill Life has 5 programs running through the year. Number 1 is the Children's Light Club, which holds every last Saturday of the month. It's a Zoom connection, so you don't need to fret about the location. This spans from children of 5 to 15 years. It's a Bible-based club that helps children, guide them in the today topics and how to navigate through life. Mrs. Adeoba and the rest of the directors also hold several programs like the one you're here observing today, the Parents Conference, the Teenagers Conference. She also holds a leadership program through the summer months that helps teenagers and youths navigate through the early challenges they face and also build strong leaders that will be proud of going into the world out there. Join me today in welcoming the panelists that will be here, channeling us and guiding us through the day. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat box, and also would like to know the location you're joining us from today. We hope you enjoy today's session thoroughly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Toby. Welcome again to all our panelists. It will be great to know the people that are here. I see some people are already saying hi in the chat room and telling us where they're from. It's good to know. I see someone from Ontario. I see another person I see people from Canada. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us. So we'll dive right into this, but I would like to introduce our panelists very briefly. My name is Ife Adeoba, and I will be introducing Mrs. Feyi Richards first. Mrs. Feyi Richards, she's a wife and a mom to 2 teenagers. She has a degree in law, and she's an educator. She's the founder of the Learning Hub Academy and Azrael Nanny Agency. She enjoys reading and she enjoys music. She also enjoys the outdoors, as you can tell. Thank you for joining us, Feyi. Next, I will introduce Mr. Tom Oluwale. Tom is a Christian and he believes ministering the word in speech and in music. He's married to Oluwale and has 2 daughters, 10 and 7. Mr. Oluwale is privileged to run a leadership coaching and consulting firm called 3G. He's a certified leadership coach who believes parenting is one of the best ways to grow and demonstrate authentic leadership. Thank you so much for joining us, Tom. Mr. Dotun Adebite is our 3rd panelist that I will be introducing. Mr. Adebite is a strategy and investment professional with experience in various sectors spanning several years of practice. He has worked with various management teams and has been identified by many as an excellent thought leader. Dotun is extremely passionate about young people. He dedicates a significant part of his time to volunteer causes aimed at mentoring young adults. He is happily married with children. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Last but not the least, Mrs. Folake Oluwale. She's a wife and a mom to 2 lovely children. She has over 10 years of research experience in value-added processing and product development. As a chemical engineer, her goal is to use engineering tools to solve global issues, particularly the interrelated issues of food and nutrition, insecurity, poverty, and health. Mrs. Oluwale is very passionate about female empowerment and mentorship in the STEM fields. She's currently rounding up a PhD program at the University of Toronto. Thank you so much for joining us, Folake. Thank you, everyone. So I bet you all know that we have very esteemed panelists here today. And, you know, we're glad that they joined us to share their thoughts around raising resilient children. And our hope is that we'll all leave here today knowing how to support our children to raise resilient children. So thank you so much, panelists. We'll dive right into this so we do not waste any time. And so we're able to finish right on time. So I'm going to be asking a couple of questions. And my first question will be for Tom. Children and young people face a lot of challenges these days. Bullying, failure situations, some make mistakes, and so many other issues. It could even be that some have issues flowing or stemming from their parental issues, right? The parental issues of their own parents and then the impact on them. And it's so important for these children to be resilient so they're able to live their own lives. My question today is, who would you consider a resilient child?
All right, thanks, Ife. I was hoping I wouldn't go first, just so that I could I could hear somebody start. From my perspective, I think a resilient child is a child who is able to deal positively with challenging situations, whether they're physical situations, emotional or mental. And I say deal positively because it doesn't necessarily mean that those things would always result in a positive outcome, meaning the result itself, but the child would have at least been able to gain some lessons, gain some character, gain some strength from the experience. A good example I'll quickly try to share is that, you know, my daughter recently went through a health challenge. And in that challenge, the question she kept asking was like, why me, why this, why that? And all we were able to help her to realize was, it's not about why me or why not me. It's more about now that you're in it, what are you going to do about it? And through that process, just developing a mindset of going through, fighting through, prevailing through, for her to use that phrase, I think has helped her. So summarily, I think a resilient child is a child that can deal positively with challenging situations, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful. The challenges are many. They could be physical, they could be emotional. And what I hear you say is that a resilient child is able to pull through all of these challenges. Thank you so much for that. Dr. My next question is for you. You interact with children and young people quite a bit. If you compare the issues that the children face now to what they used to face years ago, what would you say is, how bad is it now? Is it a bigger problem now that parents need to be more aware of? And what are the things that parents should be looking out for?
Thanks for the question. I think it's, you know, parenting is one of those things that it changes with the times. And I think, but you know, sometimes the more things change, the more they remain the same, right? So it's probably the same issue. We're trying to get our kids to have all the skills to become independent, to become young adults, to be able to hold their own, achieve their dreams, and, you know, continue to be the person we were raising them to be when we're not around to kind of quality check them and all of that stuff, right? But I think a lot is changing as well, just transition. A lot of things have happened pretty rapidly in technology and stuff like that. So if you take something as simple as maybe a kid who is potentially a target for bullying, maybe because they're kind, they're very sensitive to other people's words and stuff. All you had to worry about many, many years ago was just the kids they're exposed to, maybe in school, physically, or friends, so you can physically control their circle and gradually help them, get exposed to other people. Today, it's so different, just playing a game on the device. They might be exposed to someone halfway across the world who decides to target them and start saying mean things. And before anybody gets a wind of what's going on, you're dealing with a totally different issue. So I think that one major issue is just the amount of exposure, the amount of interfaces through which kids are getting input from the environment. I think that has changed things quite a bit, and I think there's a lot to keep abreast of as a parent, because while you think you get a hang of it, something else starts to come up. And I think that for me, those two things will be main differences between them, whatever them is, and now.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. And that's so true. Technology just changed everything. Thanks, Dr. Faye, this question is for you. You own an educational outfit and you're a parent to two teenagers. A lot has happened lately with schools being accused of negligence, discrimination, among so many other issues, or maybe neglect, What would you say parents should be looking out for in schools, especially maybe parents who just move into a new environment? What are the things that they should be looking out for? Or perhaps they want to change their children's schools. What would you say is the role of, and the B part of my question is, what would you say is the role of schools in creating the right atmosphere for the children?
Thanks for that question, Ife. Can you guys hear me clearly? I think for me, the first thing is, how would I put it, is making, so if, for example, you're putting your child in a school, it's very important to speak to other parents. I believe that, because reviews, you may put your child in a school thinking this is the perfect school for my child, and it's really not. And I would give you a very good example. So currently my son is not in Canada. He's in a school in Nigeria. At the time when he joined the school, I thought that was the best school to put him in. But I also believe in asking questions. I also believe as parents, we need to be very involved with the school, with the teachers, with the principals, and the principal and the admin of the school. So for me, I was asking key questions, and I wasn't getting the right answers, and that began to raise red flags. So I think sometimes a lot of parents just believe, what, once your child is in school, that's it, is the responsibility of the school to, do every other thing. We don't really pursue questions, we don't get involved, and we don't ask our children questions, because the more you question your children and speak to them, they come back from school, you ask them basic questions, you find out, how's school today, what's going on in your school, what's going on with your friends, you begin to find answers to a lot of things. And so going back to my son, the more questions I was asking, some things were not quite right with those, with the answers he was giving me. And I contacted the school directly. I wanted to find answers, and they didn't have answers. And from there, I contacted a few parents. I did ask him, I said, can I have the numbers to some of your friends' parents? Ask them for their numbers. I contacted those parents, and they had the same issues as me. And from there we formed a WhatsApp group, and from there we had meetings with the school. But if I hadn't taken those steps, a few things wouldn't have changed. So I believe as parents, we shouldn't leave things to just the school. Right. We should always ask questions as well from our kids.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. I think that's really helpful. Knowing that one of the ways to know whether your children are struggling is to ask questions, to ask the right questions from school and to ask the right questions from the children themselves, because that's the way to know whether you can give support to your child towards raising a resilient child. Thank you so much, Faye. Folake, you're a STEM advocate and a very intentional parent, but just out of curiosity, what would you say is the connection between STEM and building resilient kids?
Thank you for having me here. In fairness, I don't think STEM in particular builds resilient children. I think the important thing is to find what interests your child and try to channel them in that direction. I can speak to STEM because this is what, this is my world. And I know with STEM, you tend to solve problems, critical thinking, that builds up the child, right? Helping the child to know, okay, I can solve certain issues if I can't solve all the problems of the world. And I think it's important to help them appreciate that one step at a time approach to problem solving also. You will have challenges, and definitely. And I think my role as a parent, or even when I find myself mentoring young people, is to help them to know that whatever is in front of you, if you're able to solve that, then you can solve a lot of things just by, taking things one step at a time, critical thinking, and being able to navigate through the problems that you do find in front of you. So definitely STEM helps, but I don't think it's only STEM. I think it's any area of interest that you can develop in your child that will help them think critically and solve problems.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thanks for the insight. It makes a lot of sense. Whatever it is that you find that your child is interested in, perhaps that thing, if you go in deeper, could help your child think critically, problem solve, and then the flip side is that child begins to build resilience. So thank you so much for that, Folake. I'm back to you, Tom. There's so many types of parents. Some are permissive and anything goes for them. They say yes all the time to their kids. Some are authoritarian parents, and those types of parents they are the extremely tough ones that the children can't even, dare say a word around them. And some are also positive, authoritative parents that we're hoping that we all are in this room, and we all are striving to be in this room where we support our children, we nurture them, we discipline them the right way, and all of that. Now, in all of this, character is being built at every point in time. Whatever type of parent you are, you're building character as well. So in your opinion, how do you think parents can support their children to build a strength of character?
Great question, Ife, thanks. I think it starts from really knowing the child, knowing that emotions are internal. What we would see as parents are the behaviors. Sometimes the emotions and the behaviors are the same, meaning if I'm sad, I behave sad. Sometimes it's opposite. If I'm happy, I can shed a tear of joy. So just understanding the connection between your child's emotions and the behaviors that you see, I think is the first step. Second would be, what is their default setting, when it comes to those behaviors. So when my child is happy, how does she normally behave? So I have my second daughter, for example, when she's hungry, she gets angry. So she's the classic angry, and she doesn't know she's hungry. She's just vexing about everything, but actually it's hunger. Then I'm just like, come and take and then she calms down. And then I guess with that, then you can now engage them in conversations. Maybe when they go to school and they come back on, they're involved in stuff and you're observing them and you see they want to quit, they want to, take the easy way out. Then I guess calling them and having a conversation around it to say, why do you want to stop this? Don't you think it can help you build this or build that? And I'll just give another quick example I think would help. My second daughter, again, she likes to do like acrobatics and all. I don't know if she's going to be a gymnast, but she likes to do those things. So one day she wanted to show me a new move and she was going to flip, but then she bumped her head on the bed. And it was a painful bump. I mean, as the father, I felt it in my own head. like it was my head. So after 2 days or so, she called me and said she's going to do it again, and she did it herself. I was even trying to encourage her to try again, but she did it herself. Fast forward 2 weeks later, we were with some friends. We went for this tubing on snow hills. And going up the hill, she nearly fell off the escalator, and that already just shed her confidence. She wasn't going to do the tubing down. The challenge was we were now up there. There was no other way down except for sliding down. So I just reminded her of that other incident where she was able to like do the flip again, and just helped her through that process. So long and short is, I think, knowing your child's default behavior, engaging them in conversations, and then showing leadership in not letting them take the easy way out. But why that other path where they would be able to like build some character, like you said, will be helpful for them in the long run.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that answer. It's and I think the key things that you have said that we need to take away from here is and that also kind of points to what Falake said, is about knowing your child, individual differences, knowing your child and knowing how best to support your child. It's not every child that cries when they're hungry. So you cannot compare your child to maybe your other child or to other kids. And so it's important that you know your child and you know how to support the child. I'll give a quick example. My son was meant to put on, so it was pajamas day the following week, but we missed it, and he put on his PJs the week before. So he got to school and he was so embarrassed because he saw every other person putting on their regular uniforms. So he sat somewhere and he was crying. I got a call from school and they said to me, oh, he forgot his, he's not putting on what everybody's putting on. He's been crying. He's been so sad and all that. And, I felt bad myself because I should also have known that, oh, it's next week. So I felt bad, and we miss it sometimes, but we move on, right? So, but we were both excited because it got new PJs. So I just spoke to him and told him, so they wanted me to come back to school to bring his uniform so he could go into class and be okay. So I just told him that, you know what, Ibukun, I want to help you. I don't want to bring that uniform to school. And I want you to, push yourself. I want you to, it's okay to be different. So we both did some pep talks, and I felt really, it wasn't easy for me, but I thought that was a great opportunity for a learning curve for him. And the teacher, when I went to pick him up from school, the teacher told me, you know what, when you said you were not coming, I thought it was a bad idea. But, just 10 minutes after, he was okay, he was playing. So I thought that was really good. And I know that if that happens another time, he's just going to be cool. At least, it will be way easier than the last time. So yes, knowing your child and helping them to navigate through it and having those conversations to push them. So thank you for that. Faye, a scenario here for you. Your child comes home and says, my teacher doesn't like me. I have no friends to play with at school. Obviously, a child that comes home to say that probably feels sad and left out. Sometimes maybe there's a feeling of defeat and all that. What would you recommend to parents who their children tell them that, with respect to how they deal with the child themselves and how they deal with school as well?
I think as parents, we all get that one time or the other with our children. And the first thing I would say, I would go back to what Tom said, is knowing that child. When a child comes to you and says, there are two scenarios here, the teacher scenario and other children's scenario. When a child comes and says, oh, nobody likes me, I don't have a friend, we have to, I don't think we parents should be emotional, because I've had this situation before. And it's about asking questions, is it just at that moment that child thinks that? Because sometimes children, maybe they have issues with other children and they believe, look, I don't have any friends, no one likes me. For me, I would give an example of my daughter. She's I don't know the right word to use, but she has more friends than her brother does. He's more quiet than she is. And she would come home and maybe something happened with a toy, or when she was younger, she would come home and tell you, nobody likes me, nobody. But I know that, you know what, that's not true. So sometimes it's about we parents knowing, you know, the scenario of what really happened. And when she says nobody likes me or I don't have any friends, I'm like, Jada, what really happened? You know, because we need to know what really happened. And when she tells me, I'm like, no, you know, I need to let you know that sometimes things happen, even with grown-ups, you know, we fall out with our friends, you know, we have issues, and it's about being honest with your children. And when it comes to teacher scenario, that's slightly different, I would say, because I always say we need to trust our children sometimes, not all the time, because children make things up sometimes, children exaggerate sometimes, but it's about listening. If they say something more than once, then we begin to look into that issue. You know, I wouldn't personally run to the school and say, oh, my child has said a teacher doesn't like me, or what. I would keep questioning, I would keep asking, you know, and when you keep asking, you begin to piece things together here and there. And that's how I would deal with things. It's just about listening to your children, knowing your children, but also making them know that you're there to listen and speaking to them through that situation.
Right. Thank you, Faye. That's helpful. And, the key takeaway from that is having conversations with your children. Yet again, we're back on this. So asking questions, saying, oh, what happened? Tell me, explain to me, let me really know before you jump to school and then they tell you it was actually your child that was, being the silly one. So it's important that you really know what's going on. And if your child can give you facts, and you certainly know that there's something going on, then don't wait, just go for it. Ask the right questions from school and help your child. That's how we build resilient children. Folake, let's talk about bullying a bit more. It's been, I think bullying is now more of a menace than it was, back in the day, because now we see children hurt themselves. We see people, we see some children get into early depression. It's been crazy, and I know that you probably heard about the issue that happened at the school in Nigeria, where a child passed away. Unfortunately, our heart goes out to the parents of that child. And this happened as a result of bullying. Now, understanding that bullying can take different shapes and forms, and you probably might not even know that your child is being bullied just by looking at his body, or, because it may not come with bruises. As a parent, if your child came home and told you that, oh, I was bullied at school because this, on the back of what Feia said, that you asked the right questions. Mm-hmm. Now, what are the things that you would recommend to parents? What are the things that you would say they should do with that child? If the child comes home and always tells you, you know what, that person pushed me, that person did this, what would you say to that parent with a view to raising a child that is resilient?
Yeah, so I've had this experience with my child, with my son in particular, and he came home and every now and again he'll tell me he was being bullied, and it's also important to identify your circumstances and situation. So this was a child that just came from Nigeria, was in a new system, and I know they were struggling to fit in. So there were things, that I was very conscious of, and I didn't want to just go into the scenario actually saying, yes, my son is being bullied, I need to inform the school. For me, it was important to engage, with him every day. So when he comes home from school, especially at that time, both of them, what happened today, what transpired. Then he'll tell me what happened, this person did this. I started noting certain things. And I was very conscious and deliberate about, putting some of those points down. Because I wanted, if I needed to build a case, I needed to have strong points. I didn't just want to go like, Faye had said, we need to be less emotional. I mean, my first instinct was, how dare they bully my son? But no, I needed to be sure that the situation wasn't just him fitting in, it was actually that he was being bullied. And so I was taking notes. Yes, I was encouraging him. I'm a Christian, the word of God, regularly telling him who he is, that you're a child of the Most High God, you have authority, you have dominion, just encouraging him. So I didn't go in immediately. And for me, I mean, they talk about helicopter parents, and I think the other part, I think there's the snowplow parent, where it's when, as the situation arises, that you then go out and clear. So I tend to hover around that, waiting until I know for sure. But it's also important to listen, right? Because I won't say to every parent, wait. It depends on the situation. It depends on the scenario. So eventually I went into the school and I, made a case. It actually got so bad that he got punched. And for me, I didn't absolve my son also of all blame, because I know my son. He has a mouth on him. So I was aware also of my son's, not so strong points. So when I went in, I wasn't saying, oh, everybody else is bad. I just laid my case out and I was listened to and the case was taken up. So definitely make sure you take your child into confidence and alert the necessary authorities, but don't just jump in. Make sure you have a clear idea of the scenario. Thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. Have a clear idea of the scenario. And once you are sure, just go for it. Ask the right questions to support your child. And something else that you said that is so critical is building up that child from the inside. And this points to what Tom had said, to say that, the emotions of a child, there's that, very big part, which the words, the things you say to the child, the things the child says to himself or herself goes a long way in building the resilience in the child. So thank you for that, Folake. Tom, you're a leadership coach, and I bet you know that everyone makes mistakes a lot of times, right? But what I find now is that many kids make mistakes and they find it so difficult to come out of it. They find it so difficult to move past their failure. And this affects so many children in so many ways, just because they are unable to move on. They maybe failed at a course and it's difficult for them to see themselves in a different light. They don't even believe in themselves anymore. So what are the key recommendations that you would like to give to parents that may have kids that are going through these issues where they made mistakes or they failed at something and it's difficult for them to pull through?
All right, great question. Not to beat a dead horse, but I think know your child is the first thing again. Just maybe to what I think it was Folake that said about STEM. Mm-hmm. I think you don't want to put your child in an environment where he or she is consistently failing because you're challenging them on something that is not their strength.
Right.
So I now know my daughters are never going to be basketball stars, and I have lost hope of getting that kind of big money from basketball contracts. But I am recognizing that, one likes music, one likes computers and stuff. And that is where I'm trying to now push them to and encourage them. So and in that space, when I now find that they're now trying to run away from challenges. So my younger daughter, for example, uses Simply Piano to learn piano. And she skips the songs that are hard, and then she goes to the easy ones. And I'm now telling her that you can't be doing that, right? You need to challenge yourself to get better, and also those ones that you find difficult. So once we found their area of, I guess, talent and passion and interest, we then encourage them to just keep going again. And my older daughter, she also plays the guitar, and she likes that instrument a lot. And again, she also has been trying to dodge the hard ones, but I've been encouraging her in that space. And one thing I now found that really helps was, I think my older daughter learned this poem in her grade 1 or grade 2. I don't know it very well, but something, try again. There's a line that says, try again. So it has now become a motto in the house that when they're doing anything and they feel at it, I just remind them of that poem. And I'm like, if something, try again, and that just really helps them to understand that it's a process. Eventually you'll get it. But I think the key thing is that first step of don't expose your child to an area where they don't really have the gifting or the ability, I think it just leads to frustration. Some of us did courses in school because our parents wanted to have an engineer or a doctor or whatever in the family. And now we're course correcting ourselves 15, 20 years after. So I think it's better we set them on the right path from the very beginning, if possible. That'll be my main point, yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. That's very helpful. Try again. I think that's something, because many of us may remember things from, growing up, and I think that's a big one for kids to remember from now, because it's going to stay with them. Just that mindset of, oh, my dad always tells me to try again. My mom tells me to try again. So it builds resilience. It just infuses resilience, and it's kind of like a default mode for them, and they keep, pushing. And another thing that you said is, don't expose your children to what certainly that is not their strength, because there's so many other things that, they have strength in. So thanks for that. Faye, and I want us to do really great with time. So, always doing things for your children, always doing things for your children. I mean, there are parents that are always doing things for their children, always helping them to think, always helping them, answering all the questions and all of that. What do you think about that?
You got me right there with that question, because I'm very guilty. I'm one of those very guilty parents, because I want to get things done and dusted. And it was a mistake I made with parenting. And I'm one of those people that we admit that, look, I've made a mistake. And I also admit that to my children. Coming back to just a quick point, what Tom said, when I make mistakes, I let them know, look, I've missed it there, and it's okay to make mistakes, but we move on. So when it comes to that type of parenting, the helicopter parent, I used to be that parent. I would do everything, literally everything. I didn't really teach my children, and show them that, look, you need to do this, or empower them. And by the time I started to learn that, look, we need, because we were empowered growing up, and why am I different? Why am I training them differently? It took time, and I'm just saying this so that there's some parents that will be here that they're just like me. We're one of those parents that did everything, and we're still doing everything for our children. And I found that as they're growing to become teenagers, it's harder to correct those mistakes, right? You're having more arguments, you're having more back talk and everything like that, but it's not too late to begin to correct those mistakes, which is what I'm doing. And then I use my personal experience with the children as well. So yeah.
Thanks a lot, Faye, and thanks for being very honest with us, because we all miss it, but we keep trying, we keep getting back up again, and that's the beauty of this, and that's what we're doing here. We're not perfect parents in any way, but we're all just learning, picking up the good ones, dropping the stuff that is not as good. So thanks for sharing that. Dotun, just on the back of what Faye has said, how can a parent manage, sometimes parents can be frustrated with kids, they can really get, frustrated. How can they ensure that their frustration, because that frustration, what would you say what kind of impact could it have on raising a resilient child? And how do you think parents can try?
Let me quickly ask you a question. Are you suggesting there's another way to manage the frustration than shouting at them? Are you?
That's a good one.
I think a lot of it depends on like what is in our heads, right? Sometimes we have to also try to remember that they're kids, right? Because a lot of times when you're judging what the child is doing with the lens of your 30, 40 years experience, whatever it is. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. We were in the car together. And I was like, I don't know what it was. I was offering him something. It's like, oh, he doesn't eat onions. Okay, this one. No, he has to be this specific for you. I was like, when your son says he's not going to eat everything they're offered, you don't have the right to ever complain, because the boy is just printing out the behavior you put in him, right? And it's like, honestly, that's correct. So I think in terms of our frustrations with kids, a lot of it is just using the wrong marking scheme, really. A child is 7 or 9 or whatever, they still have so much time to figure out the stuff we have already. And when we were that age or whatever, many of us remember a very different version of our childhood than our mothers and fathers do. We remember being good kids. They remember picking up after us all the time and having a fight about everything. So I think you just have to breathe in and breathe out and realize that you're raising kids, not adults, right? I think on the second point is really sometimes to ask, what is the frustration? Because for me, frustration should be that, it's unmet expectations that create frustration, right? Is anybody apart from you, the parents, aware of the expectation, right? So the way sometimes you expect a clean room, you have given an instruction once when you were angry in the middle of tidying up everybody's room, right? That you expect a clean room, but have you demonstrated what it means? Have you shown them? Have you worked with them to build a routine? Have you made it easier for them to achieve a clean room so that they know that at 10 a.m. on Saturday, whatever it is, this is the routine we do. You help them start the process, you walk away. Listen, they're kids. The minute you step out, they're going to find something better to do with their time than cleaning their own room. And then you probably have to check in, because many of us are very good at doing this with adults in the work environment. You would give clear instructions, you would do check-ins, you step in the work to give guidance. When the kids, yelling is not probably going to be. So I think, I'll say that for me is having that clear roadmap, the conversation with the kids, and helping them do it. And then just always remember you're managing kids, right?
Fantastic.
You're helping them become adults. So
that's helpful. That's very helpful, Dotun. Thank you. And the key things you've said here is breathe. Don't put yourself under too much pressure. These are kids, and don't get tired as well. Sometimes you see the big changes. Sometimes you see only a little change. So gratitude, be grateful that you can see those baby steps, and you can see that the children are moving towards that resilience, and you're setting them up for success as adults in life. So I think that's very critical. Don't put yourself under too much pressure. We miss it, and we try to get back up again. Sometimes you yell at your kids because that's just the default. But it's okay for you to just pull yourself back and ask yourself, did I do the right thing? So you introspect, and if you need to call them to apologize, that's okay. And I'm not saying that it's for every time you yell at your kids that you should apologize, but there are times that certainly that you just missed it. Like, I just put my frustration on this kid. It's okay to call them, apologize, have a conversation, because now we know that there's so many adults who talk about how their parents were not nice to them, and their parents were not listening to them and all that. And I've seen that happen before, when a grown-up child was saying that to her mother, and the mom was, she was just crying, and she was apologizing because she never knew that was really how the girl was feeling. So I think it's important that in this journey of resilience, we keep checking in on our children, apologizing if we need to, having those conversations, and we keep moving on. One final question for you, Folake. You're very big on research, capacity building, and all of that. How do you think parents should equip themselves on this journey of building and raising resilient kids? What would your suggestion be for the parent, and also how the parents can also help their children in terms of building knowledge and capacity?
That's a heavy question. But I will say it's very important, because at the end of the day, we are the ones that are raising these children, and they're actually a product of what we put into them. However, we should also not put that much pressure on ourselves. Forums like this are great. I mean, I've learned a lot just being here, and learning from other people, being aware that you're not all in all. Even though you're a parent, you don't know it all. And it's okay to, seek help. ask for questions. I often call up my children's teachers and just ask what's going on in their classroom. How are they doing? Because I can't know everything. And I even ask, what would you suggest? What would you recommend, to solve certain issues? Of course, I'm not saying I'm taking everything verbatim, but at least I can, there are checks and balances even for my own style of parenting. And, and it's very important that you are aware that you don't know it all. And as we've said, it's come up a couple of times here that our own experiences somehow seep, our own experiences as children or being parented somehow seeps into how we parent and how we, we express our I don't want to say control, but how we try to train our children. So
right.
I will say also evaluate what was great about your own experiences and bring that into your own space. And what wasn't so great, be deliberate about leaving that behind also. And yeah, so definitely forums like this and engaging, asking questions, which research beats, right? So yeah, definitely.
Thank you. That wasn't a big question. It was pretty easy for you, Folake, because you said a whole lot. And I think one of the things that I would like for us to take away is the fact that we just need to be deliberate. We need to be deliberate. That's a major thing. Knowing the things that worked for us back then, knowing the things that don't work for us now, and helping our children, making sure that we're intentional in how we are passing things along to them, and also engaging in a healthy relationship with other people who support our kids, asking them, being open to feedback. There are parents that when they tell them anything negative about their kids, they just flip. It's okay for you to listen so you can help your child. And when teachers and educators feel like, oh, you can't really, this particular parent always gets angry when you tell them anything about their kid, then they stop telling you stuff, and that's your loss. I just wanted to, just before I go round, I've been looking for questions, but I don't see questions coming in. So I think we can, and questions that are coming, I think Toby is doing a great job answering them in the chat room. So I think we'll just ask questions. We'll just take some sort of feedback from people. And I think if you have any thoughts or comments, just put it in the chat room before we go around the panelists again. But one thing I wanted to just say is, how do you know, what are the signs for you to know that, oh, look, I think I need to be intentional here if I want this child to be resilient? So there are a few things. Maybe your child cries over every little thing. Don't neglect that. And don't just say, oh, maybe when he grows older. No, just do something about it. Your child always reports everything, no matter how mundane that thing is. It's good to report, but when you see that it's always mundane, then, begin to have those conversations. Your child feels sad every time your child is being corrected. That's a sign to say, you know what, I need to do some extra here. We need to talk. Your child loses interest in things just because someone said or did something. Those are things that you need to look out for. Your child does not believe he can do it, or makes a mistake and feels like, you know what, I don't think I can do this anymore. Your child never wants to try something again. Your child is not confident to ask questions and just believes, oh, you know what, I think I can find the answers by myself, even if the child does not even have the resources to find the answers. It's a great thing for children to think and problem solve without always asking. But when they should ask, then they should be confident enough to ask. Those are just few examples here and there on, things that they're not physical, but they are things you interact with every day that may tell you something about your child and what you need to do. So I'll just go around the panelists and ask a few questions, or just one major question. Tom, what would you like to just say? In about 30 seconds, what would you like to say, or that key takeaway that you want the parents to go back with?
Yeah, 30 seconds, I'll try. I would say active listening. And because I'm a parent, I get to use my kids as an excuse for watching cartoons. So in Kung Fu Panda, part 1, Master Ugwe said that yesterday is a history, tomorrow might feel like a mystery, today is a gift. That's why it's called the present. And if you think it's corny, please take it up with Master Ugwe. But I wanted to just say from that statement that when our kids are talking to us, it's important that we are actively listening to them. Avoid the laptop, avoid the devices, the eye contact, to hear beyond what is being said, to silence our judgments as we listen, because we could easily get into like our solution mode, and just really give them that present of our mind and our full presence. Let me put it that way. Because as I've heard, if you do that now, as they grow older, they would reciprocate that to you in the future when they begin their own journey of life. And I think active listening just helps us to really know what's going on. And then from there, we can do everything else. So I'll just really encourage us to actively listen to our kids and hear beyond what is being said, to be able to pick what exactly might be going on. Yeah. Fantastic.
Active listening, and listen with everything, not just with your ears. Listen also with your eyes if you can. Thank you, Tom. Great advice. Faye, what would you like? What's the takeaway?
We have a few questions.
We have a few questions. Oh, sorry, I think I missed that. Sorry, Faye. Toby, where do we find the questions? Because I don't see them.
Someone asked, I'll just read out the questions and maybe any one of you guys can pick it up depending on how comfortable you feel. So the first question is, my daughter thinks she always apologizes even when she's not wrong. How do I help her? That's the first question. I don't know, any one of you guys can take that.
Yeah, I would like to answer that because my son is he's the same. And I kind of, for me, I knew that it was from my parenting style, right, when it came to, because I think it was Folake that mentioned the fact that the way we're raised also affects the way we raise our children. So I kind of believed, you know what, I used to be the one to tell him, you need to apologize, you know, when he does something, I'll say, but I think he didn't quite understand there wasn't a line. I didn't draw a line of, you know, what you need to apologize for and what you don't need to apologize for. So even if I say something as small as, why did you leave this here? I'm sorry. Anything you say, the first thing that comes out of his mouth is, I'm sorry. Yeah. And then in school, he was constantly he was apologizing to his friends, to everybody. And I think that kind of started to affect his confidence as well, right? Because he felt he was always in the wrong. So when I noticed that, and this came to what I wanted to say before you said that we had a question, is by also letting our children know when we have made mistakes, is being honest. We were all brought up in a generation where our parents always were perfect. They were right. Everything they said was right. So when I noticed that, I did let him know that, you know what, I made a mistake, right? That I was wrong, and I also had to guide him in the right way. So sometimes when he apologizes to me, I'll tell him, no, there was nothing to apologize about. You didn't have to apologize about that. So I think it's constantly doing that with them.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Toby, do we have more questions?
Yes, I just shared the next one with Tom. Did you get that in your chat? So yeah.
Okay. Hereditary idiosyncrasies impacts resilience or lack of it in a child. This is big English. So idiosyncrasies that are inherited from the parents, how does that impact the ability of the child to be resilient? It's the reality, right? And I think it's what Dr. said earlier as well, around the fact that expectations and experience, you know, matching that and balancing that. So I think one of the ways we can manage that or address that is by being vulnerable as parents. I think it was Faye that talked about sharing your own experiences as well. So if, for example, I talk a lot, and I can notice some of that in my daughter as an example. Maybe that's not a resilient issue, but just as an example. One of the ways I've tried to help her to deal with that is to learn to summarize the things that she's saying. If she wants to report what has happened at school, she tells you like every single thing. And then my wife is like, just get to like the summary of it. And then I tell her my own experiences as well, when I would talk and, you know, so sharing your own stories and how you sort of navigated them, first of all, helps the child to see that there's that connection. This is the person I'm like, you know, and then you now sharing that you've been able to get through it gives them the permission to navigate and get through it as well. That will be my main suggestion on how to deal with that. Yeah.
And I think that's great. I think that's the answer. That's the answer, because you can definitely relate with the child. You can see your child you can see yourself in your child. Yeah. And because you have grown past those things, you can help the child. Thank you so much, Tom. Do we have another question, Toby?
Yes, we have two more. And for the sake of time, I'm going to tell just two people to answer this one. So if you guys can do 1 minute each. Mr. Dr. Adigwite, did you get the question I sent to you?
Yes, I have it.
Please, can you take that one?
It says, my daughter is so carefree generally, even academically, even after the advice and all, and it's affecting her, but what do I do? I think this one is interesting because, Toby, I don't know why you assigned it to me, but I'm going to tell you guys something from my childhood, right? When I was a little kid in elementary school, a lot of my report cards used to come back brilliant but playful. And my mom couldn't, she was livid about it because who brilliant help if you are playful, right? That's all she can say. I think I'll speak to the academics. Academics itself, and Faye, I hope Faye agrees with me here because she's the expert. Academics itself is really a matter of programming, right? So you ensure that what does the kid need to know? What's our current curriculum? She getting it in school? What are the checkpoints? So if you need to get, there are lots of programs to use at home to kind of put the kid doing the work, putting in the work. So here's, I think, IXL, it's called, and there are a couple of other things you can use, Kumon for math, to ensure that. But you have to be involved. I don't know where you guys live, but you have to do that thing that we think teachers do in school. You have to do it at home, manage that program and get involved and do that. Just project manager doing the actual academic work. So let's take that aside. I think the careful one may be personality, and what you can just do is also help to get routines in place. And look around, you might be surprised that the child is borrowing the behavior from the environment. It might be one parent is naturally, takes life easier than everybody, and the child is like, why is your own so hard now? Daddy or mommy is doing fine and they're not so uptight. So I think it's that, but the academics is the one I wanted to know.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Dr. I think that's very helpful. In 1 more minute, Falake, do you want to speak to the question you have?
Yes, I do. I think this is about signposts to look out for that, we need to help our children build up their resilience, right? I think we've talked about a lot of it. I have some points here. The child doesn't want to try again, giving up easily, not demonstrating long span interest in things because they're struggling with it. So these are signposts that we definitely know, okay, we need to help this child to build up their confidence. And how do we address this? It's what we've been talking about. Just keep encouraging the child, keep affirming the child. Last night, I had a Bible study. I do this every day with my children, where we have a Bible study session time. I tell them, read the Bible, come back to me. What did you learn from it? And then we'll talk about it. And what I brought out of yesterday, I'm trying to be very fast, was the fact that I wanted them to know that, who are the I said prioritize the people that should validate you. I wanted them to tell me whose opinion holds a lot of, the most weight for you. So they started with God, and I said, that's good. But I went back in to check, what do you mean by God? How do you know God actually, things like that, just helping. And I told them, after God, it's family, daddy, mommy, people that actually genuinely love you, and then yourself. You need to be, validate yourself. All those other ones you see outside, please know it's just, for the moment. So that's.
Thank you. Thank you so much. If we have any questions, you could always send us an email and we can respond to you in due course. We're pretty much done, but I think Toby needs 30 seconds to wrap this up, and that would be it.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Ife. We will not underestimate the time you guys have spent here with us. We know time is very valuable. Time is very expensive. And we really appreciate that you guys have spent the last 60, 62 minutes with us. Like, we did not take it for granted at all. And I believe that our listeners gained so much from the level of experience and stories you guys shared. We have such great panelists here today, and we really appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thank you so much. And look out for surveys, look out for questions that might come to you, follow-up questions. We really want to hear from the community out there. So thank you so much, Faye Richards, Mrs. Faye Richards. Thank you so much, Mr. Dr. Adebite, Mr. Tom Oluwale, and Mrs. Folake. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the time you guys spent here and the experience you guys shared. We do not take it for granted at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.